the University of Arizona. So they go back, and I've seen Josh and kind of the work that he's done. And obviously he's had success as a head coach, a really talented recruiter, I think, which goes without being said, and the success that he's had dating back to when his dad was running Houston Hoops, the AAU program back in Houston, and everything they've done on the grassroots scene. But I think Josh is a guy that's going to be able to get players into UNLV, and with that, hopefully can have some success like he had when he was at Memphis and at Georgia Tech as the head coach.
Curtis, you're obviously part of this program pre-NIL, but you're around enough college basketball to know what it's like now. What are the conversations like when you're taking over a program like this with the historic side to it, and there's a win-now attitude, and how you balance everything with the conversations you're going to have here in the next few weeks and months?
I think probably that's going to be the thing that Josh has to get a grasp on very quickly. I mean, Coach Pastner's going to have to come in and make sure he's got the backing and the resources and the support in terms of NIL and budget to be able to go out there and to couple his savvy recruiting skills to be able to go out there and get those guys and make them offers that's going to get them to Vegas and allow them to come to Las Vegas and help rebuild or continue to build this UNLV basketball program. But I think we all know right now where college athletics is, you've got to have support, you've got to have resources. And I don't see any reason why Josh would take this position unless he knew that he was going to come in and have those things at his disposal. But I think for him, it's about having those conversations, and he's a coach with a lot of success and a lot of history throughout his career, even when he was at University of Arizona under Coach Lute Olson, to be able to have this conversation with the people that can help him get in the doors and get the guys on campus. But I think Josh can have to get to work quickly because, again, as we know, I think there was over 1,000 guys that went into the transfer portal on that first day that it was open.
There's been a lot of pushback, but there's also been some support out there. There's been some very highly recommended quotes from some big-time people. My argument this entire show has been, hey, Eric Harper has done nothing but good when it comes to the football program that we all pretty much have written off for so many years, decades, when you played, right? I mean, we know. But when Harp has come through with the football side, you have to be optimistic about, and I'm not talking about you, Curtis, who knows this guy, but in general, you got to be optimistic based on that Harp knows what he's doing right now, right?
Yeah, I think, just the success that Harp's had in terms of hiring football coaches with Barry Odom, and then when you bring in Coach Dan Mullins and the success that he can hopefully build upon what Coach Odom did, I think you've got to have some faith in that aspect of it and allow Coach Pastner to come in and have his chance to kind of do the same thing with basketball. I will say the one thing, and I don't know if people are going to like this or not, I think in terms of in the Mountain West Conference, obviously I think the basketball side, it's a lot stronger than on the football side. And so I think it's going to be more important to get in here and get going quickly because, again, there's a lot more teams that you have to compete with, just with 4 teams getting in the NCAA tournament as a prime example, and Boise just being on the outside of that, and to where you're going to have some competitive conversations, competitive games from top to bottom across the Mountain West.
Curtis Terry, former Rebel and analyst now on radio, and he'll be the host of the Josh Pastner radio show when that starts up again later in 2025. As he hits the ground, what do you think is the most important thing for him to do? Is it roster rebuilding and roster I was going to use the word accumulation, but I guess acquisitions. Is that the first thing, or does he need to get out and spend the first couple of weeks also maybe cobbling together support and good favor in the community?
No, he's got to go get players, 100%. Obviously it's going to be important to go out there and get support within the community, but the community is going to support him based on the guys that he has on the roster. And I think first and foremost, if he hasn't already, but I'm sure he has, he's got to reach out to Deon Thomas Jr. He's got to try to keep his point guard. And Coach Pastner's had success at all his stops in terms of with guards and getting guys to the next level. And I think that's going to be a big part of his pitch. But he's got to try to be able to maintain or retain Deon Thomas Jr. And then from there, use his recruiting prowess to go out and get some of these big guys that are in the portal. And that he's got connections too, just from his time when he was at Memphis and at Georgia Tech. Just being in those parts of the country, hopefully he can gather and gain some different talent that we haven't seen for UNLV in the Mountain West Conference. But he's got his work to do. And obviously we know with the roster kind of being depleted with guys going in the portal, but that's the case for a lot of programs with Coach Pastner. And I really mean this when I say that. I think he's one of the better recruiters out there, and he's shown that time and time again. And so it's a matter for him to get on the horn and start making those calls. But I can guarantee that he's been doing that ever since he agreed to the position last night.
Would you make sure to also bring back Bear, Bedford, and Henley?
Yeah, I think you got to try to keep as many guys as you can, and it depends on where you want to go. And we talked about this at the end of this past season. I mean, if you go into next season with a core of Deion Thomas Jr., Jaden Henley, and Bear Cherry, I mean, you're in a good spot right there. That's a really good three-headed monster. And then you go out and you kind of build the rest of your roster based on those guys and kind of putting together, making sure you get size and athleticism and length. But I think those are the kind of three big guys, and if Bedford's going to get that extra year as well. It's about continuity. So the more guys that you have that have been there, that's going to help when you try to reach out to the community to sell tickets. And I think those 3 to 4 guys right there would be a good base. But we know you've got to have more than that in terms of just to be able to be successful and get the players. And we'll keep saying this is going to sound like a broken record, but you've got to have the players. And so therefore you got to have the resources and support financially to be able to get those players in this day and age in college athletics.
Speaking with Curtis Terry, voice of the UNLV Running Rebels, former Rebel too. Curtis, when he has his roster, let's fast forward to November. You know him, you know his style. We can read about it. But when it comes to UNLV, this conference, the opponents, what are we going to see in terms of system and what you think he'll implement for this program? What are we going to see from this team? They're going to put the running back in the Running Rebels?
I think you're going to have to. And I think Coach Pastner knows in terms of what just the history is with the Running Rebels and what you can do here in Vegas. I'm very hesitant and timid when I make these kind of just suggestions or opinions based on what type of style the team is going to play, because regardless of who the coach is and what style or system that they've had in the past, I 100% think it depends on the players that you have. So if you don't have the players to where you can go run and gun and get up and down the court and get a lot of shots up and try to score a lot, you can't force that upon somebody. So I think it's really imperative for him to get the right guys that's going to fit what he wants to do. But I think they're going to probably be a very tough defensive team. And I think that's where Coach Pastner is going to make sure that his guys are able to lock down and get stops. And we know within the Mountain West Conference, those teams that do that are the teams that have success in the conference. And then those are the teams that typically go on to the NCAA tournament. But you've got to be able to get stops. And then from there, you've got to be able to score the basketball. But I think Coach Pastner is probably going to put together a really good staff that's going to allow him to encompass all of that. But I don't want to pinpoint on what they need to do on terms of the court, because I think it depends on what guys you have, and that's going to be the first and foremost thing they've got to get done.
Curtis Terry's with us. So I mentioned, getting out in the community and, making relationships. Can I mention relationships that I'm often confused by and about? You played here. You coached a little bit. You've been a broadcaster for a long time. I know with Lon Kruger, they tried to do a better job of reaching out to UNLV players of the past and especially of the 90s. I often feel like there's a vibe on social media, like somehow those guys aren't appreciated or they're burned. Like, how do you think UNLV is right now with some of the alums? I mean, I've already seen the whole Lute Olson thing. There's this, slap in the face, Arizona guy, Pastner, Tark. Like, I just don't understand how they can satisfy everyone. There always seems to be some complaint about someone feeling like they're dissed.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm sure you guys can agree with this, but you're never gonna make everybody happy, and you can't try to please everybody because it's a job that's impossible to do. And I think there's anything between the Lute Olson, the Tark, all that stuff that's out the window to me. I think with Coach Pastner, he knows just from his time as a player at the University of Arizona, the success they had there when he was playing, and he was on the 1997 national championship team. But then just in the brotherhood that they have at University of Arizona, kind of in the past used to be Point Guard U, and it's a team that I grew up watching when my brother Jason went to University of Arizona. I've been a longtime Wildcat fan since I was like 5 or in 5th grade, and I understand what that means. And I think he understands what that can be here at UNLV. And like when Coach Lon Kruger was in charge here, his big mission was to make sure you reconnect with the former players of years ago, and obviously from the Tark days. But then since then, you've got to make sure that everybody feels like they're supporting this thing and a part of it. And I'm a big proponent of you've got to have guys in the community and around the program that come to practice, that come to games, that stop by, that are always a sounding board for these young players to feel like they're not alone in this. And I think that was the biggest thing for me being a Running Rebel, is that we always had guys around that would come by practice. Richard Box was one of those guys that would just always be around and be visible. And you need that to know that if something goes wrong or you do graduate and you go on, you have people in your corner. And I think Coach Pastner is going to understand that. He's been a part of that even when he went to Memphis. Those are the big things. And I think he gets that just in terms of how to build a program, how to build that camaraderie. And that's going to be a big thing to do to make sure you've got everybody behind you, because no one person is bigger than the program.
Tell me if my comments here are unbecoming. I think it's a real big positive that Josh Pastner was reared at the feet of Lute Olson, worked with John Calipari, was at a Memphis program that played the recruiting game. I think you got a guy here that understands recruiting and understands how dirty it can get. I think that's a positive in this era where now it's above board, but you still got to freaking hustle and work hard. I view that as one of the biggest positives of Pastner. He comes from a long line of dudes who did what it took to get players.
Yeah, 100%. And I think he saw it firsthand, like you mentioned with Coach Cal at Memphis. I mean, with Lute Olson at U of A. And they had some of the best teams during those respective eras for both of those guys in those programs. And I think Coach Pastner knows how to get it done. And I keep going back to this thing that they talk about, the Houston Hoops program that his dad started at AAU back in Houston years ago. I mean, Josh took over this team. I mean, he was like 15 or 16 and started coaching these guys. And for him to be able to have that first job and some of the players that he coached in that process, Michael Okafor, TJ Ford, and then the likes of that. And then when he goes on to U of A and the people that he played with and that was around and was coaching, you talk about Jason Terry, Mike Bibby, Miles Simon, Gilbert Arenas, and on and on, and Andre Iguodala. I mean, you talk about some Hall of Fame NBA guys that he's been around, that he's coached, that he's played with. He knows how to get it done. And I think that's the biggest thing that he can lean on, his recruiting chops to go out there, but he's got to have that financial support. When you talk about guys that were able to do it back in the day when maybe it wasn't above board, but they were still able to get players. Now, if you're able to legally go out and do it, I think Josh will be able to get the job done.
All right, before we let you go, Curtis, I do have to let you know that I was messaging with a certain young lady in Seattle. You do know that the upcoming season of Ginny and Georgia is coming on. So if you don't catch up, bro.
I did not know that, but it's definitely not on the top of my list right now. I think the biggest thing is make sure we get some players on this roster for the Runner Rebels and then roll into the spring and see.
I'm just letting you know it comes out in June, and I let that certain someone know that her SO better catch up. That's all I'm saying.
What's going on here?
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
All right, CT is going to be out at the press conference tomorrow. We're going to put together some sort of web stream. We'll have something up at the press conference, try to get Josh Pastner on. So look for details on that on Twitter and YouTube. Curtis, appreciate it. I'll see you in the morning.
Sounds good, guys. You guys have a good night.
There he is. Curtis Terry. Perfect guy to talk to, by the way, with ties to both UNLV and Arizona.
You know, it would be kind of cool. He brought this up about Arizona, that his tie with Mike Bibby. Mike Bibby just got the job at Sacramento State.
I saw that.
It'd be kind of cool. Just like
look at Sac State.
Yeah.
Getting a glamour guy in Brennan Marion.
Now Mike Bibby.
And now Bibby's on board. I was looking back at that 97-98 team because I actually covered that Final Four, and it was a pretty interesting team. And Pastner was a walk-on, came in the same year as Bibby, both freshmen.
Bibby's jacked now.
He is very, very
when
jacked.
He played at Sacramento, right?
He played in the tournament a couple of years ago, and everyone's like, "Whoa,
yeah,
kind of swole." Could still play.
Sure. He was at that story that I've told a zillion times, but the year that I shadowed Kobe Bryant in the Adidas Big Time up at Durango, Bibby was he was the star down at the South Gym. So in the Nike. So and those were the two guys I quoted for the story for USA Today.
I don't want to say it, but time flies, doesn't it? Damn, Willie, you're getting old.
Yes.
Let your voice be heard by texting the Findlay Kia text line